for all, and many other things as well, but not for this standard person who doesn't really exist, a person who is under perfect physical conditions, to whom nothing ever happens, so on and so forth. It's not a real person. So once this awareness-raising period has been overcome, the ONCE Foundation, which turned 20 last year, and 70 years, which ONCE as a whole turned last year, we've been raising awareness in society and researchers and technology producers. Then this is better, but we have to make a step forward, and we have to reach, well, the fact that all design for all should be compulsory. Is a 508 in the States, which forces all technology manufacturers who want to sell the government, of course the biggest customer in a country like the States, to follow accessibility criteria. And they renew that constantly because technology is constantly being renewed. In Europe, we're working with Mandate 376, which wants to reach the same goals, i.e. to force. It's more oriented for those who do public purchases, so that anything that's bought for governmental uses be accessible. So we are already defining accessibility criteria, accessibility standards, and design for all standards. So we have gone beyond the awareness-raising phase, and indeed, the whys that I write down here are obvious. And above all, there is enough technology to make that leap forward. And the only thing we need to do is to apply it conveniently. And in such a case, we will get the results we want. And we will have technology for all, as I've said beforehand, by standardizing, suppressing, developing specific things, if there are specific things that are needed by a reduced group of people, but they should be introduced in the economies of scale so that it's not inaccessible from a financial point of view, from an economic point of view, so that we can access it. And I gave you a clear example of technology that's almost only used to produce these points that go up and down, and we blind people touch in our electrical writing system, but it's not part of these economies of scale. We must promote the inclusion of everybody, and within the legal coverage, as I've said beforehand, I was talking about 376 and 508. They should not be missing. If they are missing, we will not have that promotion of the user, who is the final user of the technology, so that people can actually have their rights met. All too often, technology, what it actually promotes, what it actually allows for, is basically the difference between being and not being independent in many cases. In this Congress, we see it quite a bit, especially with regards to home robotics. And we follow that policy, technology for all with this criteria I've mentioned, and here we're working on a daily basis at the ONCE Foundation, and specifically in the department that I lead. As you know, the ONCE Foundation, and those of you who do not know it, turned 20 last year. Its founders have a gross 3% of the money from the lottery, from the ONCE lottery, and it keeps 3%. And for people with disabilities or functional mobility differences, functional diversities, people who are blind, we followed a model that has worked out and that we want to extrapolate and we want to share with the rest of the people with visual disabilities. Out of all of the money that has come into the ONCE Foundation, and I'm not simplifying, all of the money, 60% of the money is used for actions that are job-related, related to training of people with functional diversity, with disabilities, and 40%, the remaining 40% is used in actions that are related to accessibility and design for all. So, out of these 40%, I mean, to use the computer and the mic at the same time is complicated.
Out of that 40% between 1988, when the foundation was created, and 2002, we had some traditional actions, but exclusively activities were organized for the physical environment in Barcelona. I think it's the most accessible city in Europe, and you can tell. It was a long period with awareness-raising campaigns and so on. And as of 2002, with a group of companies of the foundation, we carried the largest number of activities in the whole environment. And in 2002, the universal accessibility area was expanded by the foundation with accessibility to leisure activities. We are talking about very basic services through new technologies, ICTs and other technologies, emerging technologies. At that time, this department was created, the one that I had, and which is responsible for the organization of this conference. And the most significant company within the group of the ONCE Foundation is TechnoSite. They are outside of the room or with a booth with very interesting products, which is the result of cooperation projects between the foundation and the company in the framework of the Avanza programs. There is a very interesting ATM machine outside, which is handled with different devices like a mobile telephone, a PDA. Very often ATM machines are not very accessible, but they can be rendered accessible if you can reach it through other technological devices, which are not only the keyboard at the ATM machine itself. At the ONCE Foundation, we implement the same criteria that had been implemented to accessibility to the physical environment. The same things have been implemented in technology for the access to leisure and culture. The ICTs are still very inaccessible. The digital divide is fairly large still. It has not become smaller because technology still advances much more quickly than the legal part and the awareness how to reinforce accessibility. And that has led us to activities in order to mitigate or to close this digital divide, which is still harassing us every day. This is a challenge. If it's like a TDT, the digital TV, because different menus, different tactile keyboards have to be invented, and those who do not see, well, we use our hands very much, but we do not know what to do in front of some of the flat screens that exist on the market right now. We understand that before the design phase, everybody should be taken into account, because tactile screens are not appropriate for visually impaired people. Apple is going to launch an accessible iPhone because they have been working on an interface that can be handled with the touch, through touch. The operating system is designed in a way that enable us visually impaired people to handle the iPod as anybody else, talking labels and so on. This is much more desirable, although in some cases, we are closer from the design phase of the product until it comes onto the market. The period is much, much shorter, but the design phase should already take into account those specificities. Our expert group cooperates historically with the Fonde